have conversation, or one of a couple, because I think I am going to cover Nvidia later. Do a little breakdown of what I see going on coming into earnings tomorrow, and the possibilities. So basically, right now with Nvidia, the possibilities that are being discussed are either a very strong rally or a very muted response to their earnings. But as we all know, there's another possibility, but that is for later. So tune in later for my breakdown of NVIDIA. For now, what I want to talk about is the fact that sometimes, many times, most times, feeling good is an inhibitor to your wealth creation, to building your actual financial nest egg base, to continuing the foundation of that nest egg, that base, that retirement fund, that home fund, that college education. So most investors don't realize this, but there are several areas that feel great to have go your way, but really end up costing you a significant amount of money. So, what are those three things? Well, the first is taxes. I'm going to talk a little bit about long term versus short term gains and why that's important. So, some of you may have an idea, but stay tuned. It goes a little deeper than you think. Because this gets down to your portfolio, your investment management, your cash management, and your risk management, and why you have to be very specific in those three areas. Two, returns versus standard deviation. What you will always see touted is someone's returns. I make X percent a year. If you've ever dealt with anyone pitching you investments, they're going to tell you the average return. They're not going to tell you the standard deviation. They're probably also not going to show you the growth of money with taxes and costs, being administrative costs and transaction costs included. We're going to talk about that too. Transactions will come more into play when we're discussing taxes, but that's going to come up here as well. So, what is the third and final answer? What is the third thing that tends to lead investors astray, that gives them a false sense of pleasure and joy? And that is examining historical data, examining historical returns. And when they see them, woo-wee, that's the stuff. There is nothing like going into your investment manager's office, your wealth manager, your broker, your whomever, or even if you're doing your own research and seeing that historically, if you would have simply saved $1,000 a year over the last 10 years and invested it this way, that you'd be a multi-millionaire by now. It makes you feel good. One of the most misleading pieces you'll ever see. Truly. There are exceptions to that rule, but in general, looking at historical data ranks next to useless. Unless you're looking at the actual process that took place, evaluating that process, taking a look at who the manager was, what their belief system is, and how did it change? Did any shifts occur? Or did they stand by that conviction over the time frame you're looking at in that historical data? Because if any of those things had changed, then naturally the return had changed. The increase in the dollar had changed, like the increase in your wealth. So let's start with number one. And we're not going to go incredibly deep into this. I'm not a CPA. I'm not pretending to be. I'm not a tax advisor, and I'm not pretending to be. But what I am is someone who has been investing for 25 years, professionally for 17, 18, 17, 18, whatever you want to call. When I was a wealth planner, financial advisor, stockbroker, I had a lot of names. For half of that time, I worked with two of the biggest firms on Wall Street. And for the other half, I worked under my own roof. I became very, very good at what I did. And life, as you'll find if you're a little younger, will sometimes take you in a different direction, because that was the starting point for me. That was the place I began my career and began learning about finance, investments, and all the stuff we're about to talk about now. So, taxes, long term versus short term, and what affects those two tax situations. So, first off, long term gains, that's the money that you make. A long term hold is anything over 12 months. So, if you hold anything for longer than 12 months, you're holding it long term. Anything under 12 months, you're holding that investment short term. These two things in the United States are taxed very differently. Okay. Your long term gains are right now taxed between 15 and 20%. Your short term gains are taxed in your income tax bracket. So if you make money, if you're in a high income bracket, so 35%, and you live in a state that has taxes, your short-term gains are going to cost you about 50%. So if you make $100,000, you'll give Uncle Sam in the state 50,000 of those dollars. Long term, you're going to pay 15 to 20% in overall tax base. Now, again, check with your CPA or your accountant. Da 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 da. I am not those things. I have to say that it's so silly because I already have. But what I want you to understand here is this affects your risk management, your cash management, and your investment management. Why and how? Because let's take a look at what it would do to an account. So let's say you start off with $500,000. You're 45 years old, wife, family, kids. This is your retirement account. Also, what account are you trading it in? That's for another day, though. That's for another conversation. For today, we're going to assume that you're trading in an account that is taxed on an annual basis. Okay. So if you have an IRA, a Roth IRA, a SEP IRA, any type of individualized account outside of a 401k, because it has limited options, anything outside of that arena, you're going to pay taxes on an annual basis. Now, if you are, and you start with this $500,000 and you double your money, right? You go from 500,000 to 1 million, and you have done that. Let's not call it day trading. Let's call it swing trading. So your turnover is probably somewhere around 5% a day, right? So it's, I don't know, 15% bi-weekly, something like that. I mean, just kind of averaging out here. So really, you're looking at, predominantly short-term capital gains. Most of the gains in there are going to be short-term, if not all. So let's pretend it's all. Your 500,000 grows to 1 million. You pay Uncle Sam, you pay your state taxes, you cover everything. Your 500,000 grew to 750,000. That's a 50% return. Amazing. Okay, amazing. How much work did you have to put in to do that? How much effort did it take? How much time did it take? How much research did it take to make this 50%? Because if you were a long-term holder, really just looking to miss, most major bear markets or anything that that would exceed in your mind a 10% drop in price. If you have a strategy like that, you're predominantly gonna be long-term capital gains. So for this conversation, we're gonna call it long-term capital gains. So you grow your money not from 500,000 to 1 million, but from 500,000 to 850,000. And by the way, making an additional 150,000 in the market on a $500,000 account is roughly 30%. That's tremendous. So if you're doing 850,000 long term and you're doing 1 million short term, you are tremendous at what you do short term. Just FYI for anyone out there that's thinking that's not much more money. That is a fortune more money. Okay, that is almost 3% a month. Okay, so let's not shortchange that scenario. You're at 850,000. You are gonna, let's just call it 20%, right? So you're gonna pay out $170,000. You have to pay that to Uncle Sam. All right. So you now sit on $680,000. So you have made what, $70,000 less than the short-term trader. However, you spent 30 minutes a week, sometimes 30 minutes bi-weekly. All right. Now, this is just your accumulated returns with taxes excluded. Let's talk about one more piece of that puzzle and where those taxes come from. And that is the massive amount of transactions that are taking place. If you're managing this money for yourself, you are doing all the transacting. You are placing all the orders. You are doing all the transactions. What is the cost of that? I mean, if you're short-term trading, as in, swing trading, and you're turning over that account every couple of months, I mean, I don't know if you're going to be in a inexpensive self-directed account and E-Trade, something like that. If you're trading at that level, you're going to get some sort of discount. Call it $20,000. So you've made $50,000 more dollars as a short-term trader. You have, right? You've made $50,000 more dollars. Your account is at $730,000 after transaction costs and after your taxes are paid. Whereas your long-term investor is at $680,000. However, transaction costs, I mean, not even worth mentioning. Taxes, far less paid in taxes, and time spent doing their investing, their trading, negligible compared to someone who's trying to swing trade. Negligible. Half an hour a week, maybe half hour bi-weekly. Okay, so we can see how taxes and short-term versus long-term capital gains and transaction costs really diminish your money effectively. Because if you're spending so much time over here to make this additional $50,000, there's opportunity cost there. You are not working, which is probably far more income than you're going to make trading, right? So you're not working, you're not spending time with your family, you're not taking time off, you're not taking care of yourself physically, mentally, etc., etc., etc. So just in that one example, you might feel good. You go, look what I did. 500 to 730,000. Woo! At what cost compared to taking that 500,000 to 680,000? All right, moving on. Returns versus standard deviation and why that matters. We are going to use a very simple example here, folks. We're going to take a look at $100,000. What is the difference in standard deviation and what is the difference in returns, and what does that do to your actual money? Not what does it do to the annual percentage rate of return. I don't care. I want to know how much money I make versus how much money I lose versus what makes me more money. All that matters is how much money you're making, not how much your ego or your pride or your feeling of intellectual superiority is boosted by a high return. So we have $100,000. We lose 50% in year one. Okay. So our 100,000 is now down to 50,000. Everybody should be with me. In year two, we're going to make 100%. Cha-ching. What's 100% of 50,000? It's 50,000. So we had 50,000. Now we have 50,000 more. And guess what? We're back at $100,000. I don't think taxes are going to play a major role, but transaction costs most likely are. But let's not even get into costs. Just return. We're back to 100,000. In 1 year, we had a positive 100% return. In the next year, we had a negative 50% return, which gives us an average return of 25% a year. We just averaged 25% a year, and we made zip, zilch, nada. Does everybody follow that math? You lose 50%, you're down to 50,000. You gain 100%, you're back at 100,000. You subtract 50 from 100. That leaves you with 50 divided by 2 years. That is 25% per year in return with $0 made. In fact, when you include costs and whatever negligible taxes there are, you've lost money and you just made 25% a year. Now, second example, $100,000. We make 5%. We now have $105,000. Year 2, we make 5%. We now have $111,000. In each year we made 5%. Our average rate of return was 5%. We made 5% per year, and that gave us $11,000. We made 25%, and that gave us $0. What is the difference there? The difference there is simple. And the reason I use such an exaggerated example is because it's simple to understand. The difference is the amount of gain versus loss. It's not like 100% return is small, right? Well, neither is a 50% loss. Now, people will argue back and forth. Well, that in that example, I mean, it's such a small scale, yada, yada, yada. That's the point. If I stretch this out over 25 years, the math is going to be tedious and boring. However, the same point is proven no matter how many years you take it out. When you lower standard deviation, and if you can lower it to 0 in example 2, I mean, that's amazing. You'll make far more money than your buddy telling you how much money he made in a cryptocurrency or a commodity or whatever stock has gone parabolic, because his standard deviation is going to be through the roof. And over the long term, standard deviation destroys wealth creation. I hope that example was straightforward enough. On to number 3, historical backtesting. Now, what professionals love to do is to give you historical backtesting. Why? Because it's easy to manipulate. If they give you historical backtesting and they talk about the returns, the worst day, the best day, the worst year, the best year, etc., they're using that backtesting to make you feel good. Look how good that feels. Look, average 22% a year, average standard deviation 8%, worst day 11%. Amazing. That's the worst you can do. You're going to average 22%. This is great. Now, let's talk about what you would really do if you were evaluating a fund or anything, doing an historical backtest. You would make sure that there wasn't a change in management. Number 1, there wasn't a change in strategy. Number 2, number 3, the process itself. So the overall strategy could still be a growth strategy, but what have they changed within that strategy? Did they move to a tactical asset allocation, a sector rotation? Has any of that changed? Because if you're looking at historical backtesting, you have 2 things working against you. The first is, if any of those have changed, that historical backtesting is now trash, period. So that's the first thing you have going against you. The second thing is that market no longer exists. For example, right now, we are in a very trend-following, speculative stock market, focused on tech and even more narrowly focused on AI. This market has never existed before. To do an historical backtest 5 years from now on this market is going to be ridiculous. If you had done historical backtesting on this market before 2019, I assure you it was not a beacon of light. So we live in a different market structure, different market dynamics, different market behavior. than we ever have before, almost at any given point. Now, why or how can historical data be pertinent and helpful? Well, I mean, based on what I just told you. So, one, if I'm looking at historical data over the last year, we're primarily in that same market cycle. Okay. If I'm looking at that. Two, am I evaluating whether the management has changed, whether the fund objectives has changed, or whether the strategies inside the fund have changed? If those things have remained constant and you're looking back a year, just realize that you're only looking back a year, right? But that's a very easy way to jump on trend. So if you're unsure, well, how do I jump on this trend? So the trend now has been going for several years, but I'm now ready to get involved, which honestly, if you're now ready to get involved after prices have reached these levels, that's something else you need to think about, because you're again looking to make yourself feel good based on historical returns, not the substance. We don't want to pay attention to returns. We don't want to pay attention to price. We want to look at substance. And so however, let's just what if this thing. You say, I just want to find the latest market trend. You could do historical backtesting for the last 3 months. You'll know the trend. You'll know what's moving quickest, what's falling, furthest. It's easy to be a trend follower. That is not difficult. That is not what I do. That's not what I believe in myself. However, it can be done, and that is a way that historical backtesting does make sense and can work. So I think that was pretty good for today. All right. So we covered a few areas that make you feel amazing, but actually can be more detrimental to your finances and the wealth accumulation that you're trying to accomplish than any misstep in, you picked the wrong fund, you chose the wrong investment. These 3 areas are the 3 areas that I found in 20 years affected people the most. And really, they felt great about it, which is sort of insane when you think about it. I'm going to end there. I want to thank everyone that showed up today for this live, and remind you that if you're not feeling mentally healthy today, tomorrow will be a better day. Stay positive. Do something you enjoy. Make yourself feel better. Put a smile on until it's real. Reach out to a friend. Reach out to me. But keep your head up. Tomorrow is a new day, and every day above ground is a good day. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but it really, really is. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you next time.